Welcome back. Thank you for staying with Morning Express. In case you're just joining us, I'm Jesse Rogers. We're taking a look at the press review, what has been highlighted in the papers. Allow me to introduce my panelists. Earlier on, we're joined by Gitile Naituli, who's a former NCIC commissioner. Via way of Zoom, we're also joined earlier on by Kasim Tandaza, who's a Matuga member of parliament, joining us from Mombasa. In studio, allow me to appreciate the presence of George Kithi, who's a lawyer and advocate. We'll definitely get to deliberate a little bit more about Magufuli and the latest in Machakos. We're also joined via way of Zoom by Joe Mutambu, who's the former Mwingi Central member of parliament. Gentlemen, many thanks for your time, and perhaps we can just pick off from where we left off with our new guest, George Kithi. If perhaps I can start with you, your quick reaction and perhaps condolence message to the people of Tanzania. But even as you do that, it would be proper to deliberate on what's next. And it has been highlighted on one of the papers that the ruling CCM party has called for a special meeting, even as we anticipate the swearing in of Ms. Samia Suluhu Hassan at around 10 a.m. That's according to reports from Tanzania.
Well, I think the first and foremost, we will reiterate and repeat what our president, Uhuru Kenyatta, said yesterday in commemorating the life of Magufuli, demise president of Tanzania, and the condolences that he sent on behalf of us, Kenyans. But it is a moment of reflection, because when death comes, we all subdue ourselves to the reality that that is the eventuality for all of us, now or at a postponed time. But then, even as we do that, what happens is we reflect on the life of the person who has passed on, especially if that person was in authority. It is so because a person who is in authority exercises that authority. He exercises that authority on behalf of those that gave him that authority, and therefore he is duty bound to discharge responsibility to the benefit of the people. One of the highlights about Magufuli is that he was an unknown, and of course he was not the most prominent person to have been seen to take over leadership at the very inception of his presidency. When he did, he came up with different style of leadership, which was extremely dictated by his passion and thought. He did not mince his words and his thoughts and pronounce himself in any fashion and style that he thought befitted it at that instance. Now, there are issues that emerge immediately in matters constitutionalism and matters law there, being that when a leader takes up position, he must respect institutions. Institutions are duty-bound to take over investigations, to punish, and to regulate the relationship among citizens, and also the relationship between government and those that the government governs. But when he instantly administered justice in a manner that he thought was perfect, for instance, if he fired somebody on the spot, for instance, if he embarrassed public servants on the spot, it resonated well with the electorates, because that is what the electorates want to hear. They want to hear a macho man. They want to hear a man who speaks what they intend to speak. Yeah. It happened once when Jesus Christ was mobbed, and there was a clarion call by the entire populace that he should be punished instantly, and he was punished instantly. That is the story we hear. If that is the story that Magufuli then he himself believed in, it is not a good story, because the end result is that it is systems, it is law, it is order, that then people are heard, people are regulated by law, and therefore if a person is instantly punished, the right to be heard of that, on that person, completely regulated by international law and local and municipal laws ordinarily, becomes affected. Sure. People then obey or are seen to obey and respect the leadership out of fear, but not out of the conviction on public service. Look at it now we have this discussion on him because we do not think and we don't agree, if given a chance to disagree, that that type of leadership is what should continue. We would like to see institutions govern the people. We would like to see independence of those institutions respected. In fact, we agree that there are many things he did, not out of the depth of respect for institutionalism, not out of the depth of respect for law, but because it was him discharging a certain force and authority that was dominant over the populace. By the way, the freedom of press, as we know it today, as we enjoy it in Kenya, comes at a price. But when it is diminished, when we take away the freedom of press, we take away an arm of government that is very silent, but ordinarily speaks for the people. Those are the voices that you pretend today to protect, that you pretend to speak for. But again, you take it away from the other side. Press people suffered. And then there was an immediate crackdown on foreigners. Kenyans have suffered a lot, especially those in high position in Tanzania. They were deported, they were denied work permits there, completely out of keeping with the East African community. I will say this, probably I should not hesitate to say it, that the East African community had developed. What we were moving into was into integration, into one market, and probably one currency. That, of course, told, because of the manner in which his policy and foreign policy, in fact, to his neighbors and East African community members was very negative.
All right.
And lastly, and most importantly, science is a research. Science is what dictates terms on our lives today. It's about ourselves, it's about our life. If then you go against science, which is in itself is a creation of nature, it is the creation of God, then what do you expect us to do? When you abuse science or belittle science by rejecting science, then ordinarily Mother Nature will strike. It struck and it struck at him.
Okay, interesting sentiments right there. Joe Mutambu, let me plug you into the conversation. Perhaps how best would you remember the late John Pombe Magufuli, and perhaps talk to us about his efforts to conglomerate power around him, whether it's on the national political scene or within the party Chama cha Mapinduzi.
Well, thank you very much. And I would also want to join many people across the globe who has sent their condolences to Tanzanian and to Africans. I am a Pan-African, and I feel affected by the death of our leader. I would call him our leader because he's a leader of this region which I come from, and I'm sure we are talking about Magufuli because he's been a president of Tanzania, a country which we have stayed with a lot of peace. We have done business there. I remember doing business in Tanzania, and I treat Tanzania as part of my country or my region. And everybody was saddened by the death of Magufuli. We may love or hate him in one way or the other, but being a leader, once somebody dies, he dies, whether you've been president or not. Think as a culture of African, we feel saddened when somebody leaves us, whether he was your friend, whether he was your enemy. You feel no, he has gone, and we are saddened. That is true. I am a politician, and I know a lot of pressure is exacted on politicians, and the people you lead have a lot of expectations. And sometimes the people say that some leaders get drunk with the power, and they end up making some decisions which may not be popular to many, or which may hurt several people. But coming to the issue of integration as East African, I relate Magufuli as if he never played vital role the way other leaders were there before him, and the current leaders who have been pushing. And that's why I want to agree with the recent speaker who said that we were pushing forward to having one united region and maybe having one currency. That is what is happening across the world. You go to Europe, they have joined themselves. They have even gone to one currency, which is euro. Nothing stops us from doing it here. But I think the pressure and the influence of Western has made many Africans make either bad or good decisions for themselves. And this has affected regions because everything is all about interest. And the Western countries where they have interest, they try to impress or they try to press the countries to act in a certain manner. And I think Magufuli was one of the person who felt that he could do things in his own way. I don't agree with him when in matters of diplomacy, when he banned the chicken. Yes, it is good to protect your people. It is good to protect your country. But what we need to understand is that people who live across the borders and the people who are in Busia, they'll tell you this. Sometimes you find yourself in Uganda without knowing because you don't know where the cut line is. There is no line drawn. It's only that people say this is side of Uganda, this side of Kenya. And as a leader, as a president of those countries, you have to be very wary in the decisions and actions you take against the people who live across the borders, because you may end up hurting the relationship between the neighboring countries with such actions. It was a dramatic, that action of banning the chicken and taking away the cattle from different elders, that was not the right thing to do. You could have thought through, or you could have had some people to consult, because one way or the other, animal will not know that there's a border here, I'm not supposed to cross to the other side, and animals will cross to the other side to look for greener pastures. And those are small things which can affect and bring conflict actually between the nations. So these are some of the elements which I feel that Magufuli a bit goofed, but he is a human being, and maybe he felt that if I do this, I'll become popular in my area. Maybe the decision was popular to Tanzanians, but unpopular to Kenyans. But to me, in a diplomatic manner, I would say it was not a right thing, because we believe in consultation, and some actions we could have consulted, but like our friend has said, he normally acts there. And then we remember the times of roadside declarations when people were getting fired on the roadside. And I believe in social justice, and I think that every person needs to be given a chance, a fair chance of getting heard. And you don't just come and chase somebody away simply because you feel you should go. I think there are mechanisms and there are institutions, like it has been said. So those kind of things, and I think those are the things we are enjoying here in Kenya, that our president is so calm, so tolerant, and he likes getting things being done in the right way, in the right manner, and that is what people have been fighting for. Again, yes, I would also want to chip in the issue of freedom of press. Having some interest, a lot of, actually, I am biased to press, and having a lot of interest in press, I think that freedom should be accorded, and it is there worldwide, not only in Africa, whereby press plays a very vital role in educating and informing citizens or people in those respective areas. It is the right of people to get the knowledge, or to get to understand what is happening, and to be informed and to be told. And the only institutions which does or performs that duty is none other than the press. And that freedom should be there, and it cannot be taken, and it should not be taken away. And to make some decisions which Magufuli made was like pulling that freedom away from the press, and it was not a next thing. I know it has happened, although it is not. Sometimes press can go overboard, and it is also good to regulate. And there are regulations in every country which governs how the press operates.
Okay, Mutambo.
And if they play to the regulations, I don't think there will be anything wrong. But generally, Magufuli was loved and hated in equal nature.
Definitely. Let me pick from that particular point, Mr. Mutambu, and as I bring in Kasim Tandaza, briefly, gentlemen, what next? Because we have the Vice President who comes from Zanzibar. It's not the mainland. And Kasim, I chose to talk to you. Perhaps you understand the geographical intrigues of Tanzania. Talk to us about this. How important will it be for the incoming president to pick a person to fill that particular VP position from the mainland Tanzania, as she also tries to conglomerate support within the CCM party?
I go to that. I wanted to comment something on what Kitty said, the advocate said, about following and agreeing on institutions and letting them move and whatever. I totally agree. I've always advocated for the rule of law and the institution government agencies. But in a situation where they're not working practically, gentlemen, let's agree. There is the reality and there is the ideal. I think what our other panelist, George Kitty, was talking about is the ideal situation, which we know does not exist even here in Kenya. You can imagine our whole president when he says, "Nifanyeje jameni," you know, he's the CEO, the chief executive. Everybody is looking upon him, and he admits, "Nifanyeje jameni." You know, it's the institutions are not working. And I would want to quote the late himself when he said, "If I can hire you in public, the way the CSS are hired and they announced and people now celebrate, they hold the parties in their respective areas because they've been hired, why can't you sack you in public? You know, why is it that when it comes to sacking now, the rules change and in hiring it is?" So at one point, we need that kind of a leader who will show the way. Where an institution is not working and it's proven that it can't work, he takes a step further. And I think that way then it makes the institution work. But going back now to your point about the intrigues, you know, Tanzania is made of Tanganyika initially, and we used to have Unguja, because when you go to Zanzibar, actually, the locals actually don't know that it's called Zanzibar. That one is Unguja. And it is a historical how they came together. It reached a point, I know, as I've said, and I'm taking this from my close friendship with our neighbors. I have quite a number of my relatives in Tanzania, so to speak, both in Zanzibar. It reached a point where it was not going down well. You remember, even in the previous elections, the Zanzibaris essentially have been agitating somehow to end that union. Well, whether it will be good for them, whether it will be bad for them, I think those are details which are best left with themselves. But all along, it reached a point where, again, it was like the presidency was to rotate. I tried to find out, and actually I was told that there is nothing written that the presidency should rotate between the mainland and the island, though it started that way. Remember also here, Jesse, there is the issue of the mainland also being basically 50-50 in terms of Christianity and Islam, the main religions, and Zanzibar is being basically like 100% Muslims. So those are all intrigues which come in when it comes especially to the president and the VP. For this matter then, I can for sure, not really 100%, but foretell that now that the current president comes from the island, then the VP will definitely come from the mainland. And it could even go into the extent of whether now that the president currently is a Muslim, whether the VP would be also a Muslim. And you can read this from previously. When Jakaya Kikwete was the president, also a Muslim, somehow there was a balance of the VP being a Christian. and like the situation that it is.
All right, Kasim.
But overall, I think let's hail Tanzanians for being more peaceful and having slain the dragon of tribalism. Having slain the dragon of tribalism, and also let's remember Magufuli for the way he tackled corruption in his country. And my prayer is that the incoming should also tackle corruption with the same zeal.
Okay, I'd like your quick reaction, gentlemen in studio. Briefly, the independence of institutions seem to have acted a couple of gentlemen the wrong way. Professor, briefly, before we go to the advocate himself.
Yes, I think Tandaza is exactly right. You need to understand where Magufuli was coming from. Before Magufuli became president, Tanzania was almost becoming like Kenya. It was not a good place.
Okay.
Institutions were not functioning. They had entered the corruption arena. He needed to dismantle that. To dismantle that, you need to dismantle individuals who are not upholding the dignity of those institutions.
But these individuals have laws, right?
No, listen, I think sometimes leadership becomes situational.
Okay.
It becomes absolutely situational. You come in and the axe must fall, and they fall very hard in order to put people in the shape. Remember, Tanzania, unlike us, is instilled with selflessness in leadership. That was Nyerere philosophy. Kikwete deviated significantly from that. Kikwete almost became a Kenyan in Tanzania. So Magufuli had to return these people to the path. To return to the path, he had to use the Chiefs Act, as it were, and they used it well.
Okay.
I think people need to understand that sometimes law is supposed to serve people, not the other way around. And when it fails to do that, then you make it into that.
Joe Mutambo, your final take on this.
Can I come in on that?
Yes, please do.
Yeah, I think let's do this. Humanity is attracted to mob justice because there seems to be instant justice, and the passage of time towards pursuit of justice seems to be a friction between the human psyche and what then is intended to be seen.
Okay.
So that people would like to see what they intend to see, because that is what the assumption of justice is. I'll tell you this, university professors have come to my office to represent them because they were sacked and procedurally. Members of parliament have gone to court and they've gotten orders to reinstate them because their parties sacked them and procedurally. When injustice is being meted to another person, that person, when injustice is being meted out to a person, it may be celebrated because there's a perception that that person is corrupt, that person is bad. That is what the public intends. That's why I call it mob injustice. I tell you what, even the highest holder of office in this country may want justice instantly, but he's beholden to the institutions that were put in place by the Constitution, and they must work. We must be talking to the people who are holding those institutions to work instead of destroying institutions and personalizing justice or injustice on a person of authority. Let me tell you something.
Even as you answer, what do you tell someone like Kasim who might say you're painting the ideal situation, but that's not the reality?
The rule of law is what must be the pursuit of any leader, because when it is done to another person, you will celebrate it. When it is done to you, you feel the pain and you run for justice, and you want the institutions to protect you. That's why it is said, when it was done to the Israelites, I didn't do anything, because it wasn't me. When it went for someone else, I didn't do anything because it wasn't me. When Magufuli embarrasses women and men in public who have families, it is not you. But I'm sure if Tandaza was embarrassed by anyone in public, he will feel the pain, his children will feel bad, his wife will feel bad, the people around him will feel embarrassed. That's why institutions, rule of law, I call it upon everyone. Maintain, uphold the rule of law.
Okay.
It serves others, it also must serve.
Can I give my brother an example of an institution of failure?
Briefly, before we talk to Mutambo.
When somebody goes to parliament under oath and tells parliament that I heard the people talking, I walked in and walked out with the money, and that person cannot be punished because you are supposed to be punished on Panjari. Okay, so I said, yes, Linda, what are you supposed to do? When somebody goes to parliament, tells parliament that I go for $1 billion, I have no idea who the signatories are, I don't know, that person is under oath. And that parliament is unable to punish that person for perjury because that person is lying. What do you do? When there is an institutional failure, you cannot blame a leader who comes in to correct that institutional failure. And that's what Magufuli did in the beginning, and the civil servants hated him. The public loved him. The civil servant cheated them because he affected them directly.
And unfortunately, institutions such as Parliament are not supposed to punish people. They must then investigate and pass that information.
You can't commit Panjari. You can't commit Panjari in Parliament under oath. And then it's useless.
Because they can't punish. There are institutions that must punish, and therefore you take that information to the institution that punish.
People are in America for Panjari, for lying to Parliament.
Let's talk to someone who has been in Parliament, perhaps since it's synonymous in this particular conversation. Joe Mutambo, your take on this. The independence of institutions, many might argue, is quite important. But what happens when these institutions don't seem to perhaps do their work?
Let me come in and advise Kasim that the law works as a law. You cannot bend it or twist it, and you cannot do it other way. Even in the America where he is referring, there is no murder case without a weapon or without a body. Somebody has been killed, you may know the person who killed them, but you will not be prosecuted if there are no evidence to prove that this is the person who did so. So Parliament is not supposed to punish any person. It's supposed to recommend what needs to be done or what ought to be done. So the Parliament, you will not be taken to Parliament and then Parliament start punishing you, taking you to jail. They will only recommend what needs to be done. And there are institutions. And when we talk of institutions, even in Kenya, there are institutions. The person who is arresting you is not the person who is taking care of you in the prison. Is not the person who is, judging you. It's not the person who is prosecuting you. So you cannot be arrested by a police, and this was the argument when we created the office of the DPP, that you cannot be the person who is arresting and you are the same person who is prosecuting and you are the same person who is judging. And that is what we are calling the rights of people, and it has to go that way. Yes, I know there are some decisions which leaders make which are popular with the public, but not with the law. And somebody can get away with that. And that is not democracy. Democracy is abiding and following what is on the book. And that is why if Kasim, I don't know whether he's a Muslim or is a Christian, I'll refer him to the first constitution which was given to Moses by God. Because God saw people doing things in a manner which was not right to the others. And he told them, you can do this, you can do this. You can do this, don't do this. Okay. So if people live in that manner, world would be a better place. But the moment I say, even let me give him a good example. In the football, when I do a foul to you, you don't retaliate. You don't do it back. If I kick you in the football and you kick me back, you're the one who gets the red card, not me.
Okay.
So we should wait for the law to take its course. So and we cannot. When I had somebody asking or saying that our president was asking, what shall I do? What president was saying is that the laws and the institutions are there and everything has been provided for. I am not, as a president, you cannot find somebody stealing and you arrest them because you are the president. You have a police officer who is supposed to do that. A police officer is not supposed to tell that person, I'm going to give you 10 years in jail. There is a judge who is supposed to listen to that case and do that.
So let's get Kasim's reply to this. He's definitely been on the receiving end. Kasim, as you give us your final take on this matter, how exactly do we strengthen these institutions from your point of view? Because perhaps, as you were alluding to what the president said, you perhaps were pointing out to the fact that the buck stops with him in one way or the other.
Indeed, the buck stops with the buck stops at the highest office, and that is the presidency, and that is what Magufuli actually was exercising. He knew that all the Tanzanians, he knew that all the world is looking upon him to give direction. Otherwise, if you are a leader and you cannot give direction, then I don't know what leadership will be all about. For this case, Joe, Mheshimiwa, I really respect you, but can we be realistic? Can we be realistic?
Can we give him time, kindly?
Yes.
Yeah, the way it works is that...
No, Mutambo, kindly, let's give Kasim time to give his take briefly. We'll get back to you, sir.
Thank you, Jesse. So it should be very clear, and let's be honest with ourselves, that we know there is the ideal situation and there is the reality on the ground. Even when it goes to the religion, which you are talking about, there are laws, but we know that when you break them, the ultimate goal is that you not go to heaven, you go to hell. I suppose that is what is practiced. There is no corruption in between. I don't think you can go to the gate of hell and corrupt your way and end up in heaven. And that's the way religion works, and that's where the laws were meant to work. That once you do wrong, and certainly you yourself, even when you are in the wrong, you know that you're in the wrong, then punishment should be meted. But in a situation where we know that nothing will happen, actually, by insisting that the law must be followed to the letter, it's a way of saying, let the wrongs continue being done. And that is why what is happening right now in Kenya here, it is very unfortunate that the highest office, that the president, is not able to crack the whip. It could be outside the law, but it is my position that for us to come back to our senses, I'm sorry to say that, we would need such a leader. Okay. We cannot have the CEO of this country also complaining. Now, if we complain, what next? Giving an ultimatum that I would want this case concluded within 21 days, because a lot of taxpayers' money is lost. And after 21 days, nothing happens, nothing is heard, and we say that is the law, surely. Up to what point are we going to keep on losing? Up to what point are we going to encourage this kind of lawlessness, this kind of corruption?
Well, I think your point is definitely home. We'll continue interrogating this. Allow us to take a short break. I'll definitely come back with you, Mutambo, as we get to deliberate on the latest on this particular matter that seems to be touching on the independence of institutions, even as we boil over to the fact that Machakos vote counting is still ongoing. Remember, the by-election just concluded yesterday, where voters took to the polls to elect their new representative in the Senate House following the death of Kabaka last year in December. A couple of the front runners, Wiper Party, the candidate right there, as well as UDA's Ngengele, is also on the ballot. Remember the latest developments surrounding Maendeleo Chapchap. One of the candidates did withdraw from the race, but IEBC mentioned that they did not receive an official statement on this. So we'll continue following up on that particular issue. Jeff Kirui is on the ground for us. Vote tallying is underway, so we'll be back after this short break with the latest on Machakos by-election, the vote counting, and perhaps what this portends in the outcome and going forward to the 2022 general election. Do stay with us. You're watching Morning Express. We'll be back in a few.
This is KTN News.